Hey, back with another video. Today we're gonna be reacting to were the Gospels written by the disciples, the originally in Greek? That's a good question. That's a really good question. Oh man, I actually know the answer to that. Oh shit, hold on, I got a cramp. Ah, okay, I'm good. All right, but I actually know that. Let me get my water. And for y'all who will be wanting to know what I'm drinking, it's like the package you put it in, you drink it with the water, and it's really good. It's really good. But I think no. I don't think the disciples wrote the Gospels. It doesn't make sense because the disciples spoke Aramaic. They spoke Aramaic and Hebrew. But then again, Hellenism was happening at the time. So, in Hellenism, if you understand it, it's nothing but syncretism of the regions. And the Greeks were in that region. Matthew was a tax collector, so Matthew could have had to understand how the Greeks worked. So he probably could speak it, maybe. Jesus maybe could speak it. Paul probably could have spoken it. Definitely Paul could have spoken it. But Paul wasn't a disciple. But half of the New Testament is written by Paul. I don't know. I'm back and forth on this, but let's go. Let's see what they say, man. Subscribe, turn on post notifications, and let's go.
Yes, sir. What's your name? Hello. My name is Matthew.
Frankie Turk.
So,
what's up, Matt?
I'm curious because you earlier were mentioning something about how
Write this down.
we don't necessarily need the Bible to understand morality. Is that correct?
You get more details in the Bible that you wouldn't have if you didn't have it. But basic right and wrong, thou shalt not kill, murder, steal, that we know that intuitively.
Okay. So I guess my question is, so assuming that's true either way, would you agree the Bible is written by men?
Oh, sure. Yeah, it's written by men, yeah.
This is something that I could struggle with, but I study linguistics and I do a lot of stuff with languages, and to my knowledge, and I think to a lot of biblical scholars, but I can't name me off the top of the head because it's something I just recently was reading, but ancient, it was like some form of like ancient Greek was the original version of language that the New Testament was written in. Is that what you believe as well?
Jesus probably spoke either Aramaic or Hebrew, and it was written in Koine Greek.
Koine Greek, yep.
Yes, okay. So
I know my shit, y'all. I know my shit, y'all.
How do we believe, or how do you believe, rather, might be a better question, the Bible was written originally? So do you believe, up there it says opponents admitted Gospels written by disciples? Are you saying written, like the Gospels according to Mark were written by Mark, or are you saying that just disciples is in somebody that follows like the teachings of the Bible or something like that?
Who wrote the Gospels is the question? Or
yeah, just addressing the one point, saying the opponents admitted Gospels written by disciples. So I was just wanting the clarification.
Okay, yes, well, as far as we know, the writers of the New Testament, there's 8 or 9 writers depending upon who wrote Hebrews. Okay. Most of them bear the name of the person, like Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, except, the letters of the Apostle Paul, there's about 13 of them. And then there's other letters written by people like Peter, Jude,
So clarification, you believe
James.
Gospels according to Mark was written by Mark?
Yes.
Okay. The same exact disciples written in the Bible, so Mark in the Bible wrote Gospels according to Mark. Yes?
He wrote the Gospel according to Mark. That's what the earliest evidence shows, yes.
Well,
now, he was probably getting his information mostly from Peter. That's the thought there.
Well, I would say...
Wait. There's no evidence of that. There's no evidence that Matthew actually wrote it. Actually, there is. There's secondary evidence. There's not primary evidence, but there's secondary evidence that Matthew wrote Matthew. I think it was Matthew. There's secondary evidence. Secondary evidence, somebody says he did it. That's secondary evidence. Keep that in mind. Now, secondary evidence is still important because we wouldn't know about that region and the stuff we know about that region, or we wouldn't know about that region unless we had people who were speaking from that region to talk about what was going on. But it's not primary. It's not primary. Because also, I'll go into that in a minute. Let's keep going.
Most of the evidence points to that being completely false because the people at his time, and Mark, the position that he was in socioeconomically, had no knowledge of Greek at all.
Oh, no, sure they did.
I disagree. I think most historians would disagree with that, and I think most biblical scholars admit that Mark did not write the Gospels according to Mark. You just attest to it.
Well, wait, are you saying Koine Greek did not exist in the first century?
No. I'm saying that most people spoke Aramaic at that time. Most people also did not speak Hebrew, ancient Hebrew that was mostly attested to religious figures. And as fishermen and as these followers of Jesus, they were not in the church, they were not wealthy, they did not have high socioeconomic standing that is associated with knowing either ancient Hebrew or ancient Greek.
Well,
Woo! He just dropped the gem. I want to see what Frank's response is going to be that, but he's absolutely right. I said it wrong. They didn't speak ancient Hebrew. They mostly spoke Aramaic. Some of them spoke Hebrew. Some of them spoke, but like it was a very small amount of people did speak Hebrew for sure. And around the time of the gospel writings, they couldn't have been speaking Greek. Well, it's interesting though. Like, wouldn't it have been? Never mind. I'm gonna ask a stupid question.
What you're doing though is you're taking aggregate data, Matthew, and you're applying it to individuals, and you can't do that. You can go the other way.
Sorry, why not?
It would be like saying that.
I mean, we look at statistics, we look at evidence, and we say, to our best of the knowledge, people of his socioeconomic standing did not have the knowledge of this language to be able to write the Gospels according to Mark in point A.
What you can't do is like suppose you say that the average, just I'm making something up, the average income in Fairfax, Virginia is $100,000 a year per household, and that's the average. You can say, okay, that's the average, but you can't point at one person in here and say, you're making $100,000. You can't take aggregate data and apply it to individuals, just like you can't take the aggregate of the knowledge of the first century and apply it to Matthew, Mark, Luke, or John, because you don't know if they were a special case.
Yeah, but that's exactly my point.
That's a good point.
We don't know specifically. And so when you don't know specifics, you go by aggregate data because that's what the closest average person is.
But
that's
if
facts.
You have testimony from reliable people that says they did write it, just like if I have testimony from reliable people that said that that man did make $100,000, then I would say or 200 or whatever it was, then I would go with that rather than trying to apply the aggregate data to the individual.
Wait, the question is, who are the reliable people? I know he's not talking about Josephus. No, he's not talking about the early church fathers. Who are the reliable people that are the ones that we can trust with that Matthew wrote it? Let's hear it.
Sure, but where do we see any evidence or statements that are reliable saying that Mark is able to speak and write exquisite point A?
The early church fathers widely attested the gospel writers to the names that we have now, and there is no other data from that time period would suggest any other authors.
Sorry, but the religious figures at that time are very notorious for completely fabricating information or records about
They absolutely were.
religion.
Matthew, you are again taking
Yes, that is absolutely correct. They absolutely were, because they fabricated Josephus. Something in the writings of Josephus, where Josephus called Jesus, I think we called Jesus the Son of God. He would have never said that. He would have never said that because he was a Jew. He was a devout Jew too, so he would have never said that.
aggregate
Yes,
data
and
and applying it
that's
to
what I'm saying.
individuals. What?
And I'm saying that because we have no knowledge of these specific people at that time, we have to go by the best possible information.
No, we do have knowledge. We have people writing and attesting about it.
Yeah, you're saying religious figures who, again, are notorious for going back into the period of time that Jesus existed, where the records were
All right,
contemporaneous.
Matthew, let me ask you a question.
Sure.
What would the writers of the New Testament, what motivation would these people have to invent all this?
Ooh, I got it. Power. Think about what Christianity became. Think about what the early church fathers grew into. They grew into the Catholic Church. The Catholic Church ended up being the most powerful church in all of the land. Power. If you convince somebody that God is watching you when you do things and that I'm ordained by God, you have power over them. You have power over them. People fear that and respect it. So, power. That's literally the reason. I think. I don't know what he's going to say, but I think power.
I don't claim to know any motivation.
Okay, so then why are you
Good answer.
applying nefarious motives to these people that you don't even know?
Are you talking about... No, I'm talking about two separate people. You're saying that we have writings from religious figures who, in the same vein, fabricated evidence, such as I don't remember the exact guy's name, but there was a really famous, I think it was like Josephus. He was a very famous Roman historian. Josephus. Sorry, pronunciation's wrong. I wasn't sure the exact pronunciation, but he's very famous for being very strict in writing about historical figures, especially religious Messiah figures at the time. And it's been pretty accurately debunked that the writing that was in Josephus's work about Jesus existing was completely fabricated by religious figures at the time.
Okay, well, first of all, that's not true.
That is true.
No.
Matthew is right. It is true. The writing that was debunked was Josephus saying that Jesus is the Son of God. That has absolutely been debunked. He never said that. Everything else, there's still other things up for question, but that was definitely put in by the early church fathers. That is 100% fact.
We can disagree, but there is one truth. So.
First of all, the only way you can tell if somebody is misquoting something is if you know what the actual quote was, right? So what should Josephus have said, rather than you're talking about the famous passage in Josephus.
He got you.
Scholars do agree that Christians altered some of what he said.
Wow.
But we have an Arabic version that appears unaltered. And it still talks about Jesus, and Josephus also talks about Jesus when he talks about the death of Jesus' brother James. But I don't know what that has to do with Mark writing Mark. Let's just say...
Oh, wow. That has everything to do with Mark writing Mark, dude. Wait, Frank, he's killing you right now. That has everything to do with Mark writing Mark. If you can prove that the early church fathers were liars, that they were changing things in certain writing, right? If you can prove that, which you just did, you said that it was fabricated. Frank said it, not him. Frank said it. Said that, yeah, they proved that some of it was a fabrication, but they have an Aramaic version that no. You just proved that a part of what people believe and the version that most people get was fabricated. You just proved that. So by proving that goes all the way to the point of Matthew not writing the book. Could the early church fathers have lied about Matthew writing the book? And could they have had some hand in in the book of Matthew? Let's see.
You're right. Let's just say we don't know who wrote the Gospels. So, does that mean that what was written in the Gospels is false?
No, not saying that. I was just saying that it shows that they're trying to put this in a more elegant situation, but to attest that the writers were there at the time and that these specific biblical figures lends truth, if you believe in that, to the authenticity of the Bible. And I'm just saying that does not seem to be the case.
Okay.
I'm saying you use that as further proof, once you already believe, of evidence of, oh, look, Mark was there, Mark wrote the Bible, this has to be true, or this is more likely to be true.
Okay, look, yeah, we know documents and sources were written very early. I didn't have time to go through it here. Even Bart Ehrman, the great skeptic from UNC Chapel Hill, admitted...
He talked about Bart Ehrman a lot. He talked about it in the last video we reacted to. Bart Ehrman definitely comes up a lot. You like using him.
Paul writes 1 Corinthians in 55 AD. And an ancient creed that talks about Jesus dying and rising from the dead and everybody that he appeared to comes all the way from the 30s AD. It can't be legendary. That creed is put in 1 Corinthians 15 verses 3 to 8. This is very early stuff. It cannot be legendary. Now the question is, how do you interpret the data, not what is the data? People, atheists, Christians, everyone in between, agree on the data. The question is, how do you interpret it? Do you say Jesus rose from the dead or not? You know, Bart Ehrman, the great skeptic at UNC Chapel Hill, will not take a position on an alternative explanation for the resurrection because he knows that every position he tries to take has holes in it that can't support the weight of the evidence. So the real question is, did Jesus rise from the dead? Not who wrote the Gospel of Mark, or whether Mark told everything exactly the way it should have been told. The question is, did Jesus rise from the dead? And that's really the issue.
Sure. That really is a funny thing, but that was leading into my point about morality, was just if the Bible is written by man, and if we don't necessarily know the authenticity or whether or not these people are telling the truth, whether or not they're lying or not, how do we go about understanding better of what is God's morality? Because we have to just make assumptions based off of the Bible, based off of what we believe God has said or God has done, and we interpret that in various ways. So my point was more, it does seem like, sure, if God exists, there's an objective morality, because whatever God commands is objective morality. But my point being is, how do we, as people, understand exactly what that is when God himself did not write the Bible, when it's just other people saying this is the case, and it's other people's interpretations? Because when you write something down, especially when God is saying this or God is saying that, or God commands in certain ways, when people write this down, how do you know they're accurately writing the events, and how do you move from a relative understanding of your own personal interpretation and morality of the Bible to a divine, this is...
All right, let me just ask you a quick question, and then we got a line behind us, so we'll have to go. The quick question is this: do you have any doubt that murder is wrong? That rape is wrong? That theft is wrong?
I mean,
do you have any doubt?
Sorry, we have to define motive. So if motive is just...
No, do you have any doubt that murder is wrong?
Most likely, no.
No, you don't have any doubt, right?
No.
That's my
point. I would specify that there are situations and there's a struggle that personally I believe, but I won't go into this, but it has to do with whether or not my eternal life in heaven is worth other people's lives. More or less, if I could murder somebody and then that would send me to hell, but it saves hundreds of thousands of other people, should I not feel obligated to do so? And so there's cases, I would say, where...
Well, Jesus volunteered to be murdered for my benefit and for yours. Let's talk later, because we're out of time, and I appreciate the question, Matthew.
Man, I ain't gonna lie, Matthew kind of had him stomped a little bit. I ain't gonna lie. That was a pretty good video, but Matthew kind of had his ass stomped. Excuse my language. I know we got a lot of Christian audience watching this, but Matthew kind of had him stomped. Yeah. You say he didn't, and you crazy. But hey, all right, I'm out, y'all. Peace.